Haribo.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thanks for always making us laugh this early in the morning and right before Bhagavatam class. It's so great to be here with all of you. It's an honor always being at the Bhakti Center, being at Shri Shri Radha Muralidar's home and their lotus feet, Gaura Chandra, and all the devotees. It's always an honor and privilege, so thank you. We'll go right into the verse and we'll have a little discussion and go from there. We're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 10:25, Canto 10, Chapter 20, Text 5. And this is the rainy and autumn seasons in Vrindavan. So we're going through the 10th canto very diligently, gradually, and we're on the 20th chapter here. We're speaking toward the rainy and autumn season in Brajdam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Gyantimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurum Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisheshishunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Panchakalpa Tarubhasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Okay, so we are reading from this verse. We'll go straight to the translation. With its rays, the sun had for 8 months drunk up the earth's wealth in the form of water. Now that the proper time had arrived, the sun began releasing this accumulated wealth. Again, with its rays, the sun had for 8 months drunk up the earth's wealth in the form of water. Now that the proper time had arrived, the sun began releasing this accumulated wealth. Purport. The Acharyas compare the sun evaporating the earth's wealth to water to a king's collecting taxes. In chapter 20 of Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Srila Prabhupada explains this analogy as follows. Clouds are accumulated water drawn from the land by the sunshine. Continually for 8 months, the sun evaporates all kinds of water from the surface of the globe, and this water is accumulated in the shape of clouds, which are distributed as water when there is a need. Similarly, a government exacts various taxes from the citizens, such as income and sales tax, which the citizens are able to pay by their different material activities, agricultural, trade, industry, and so on. This taxation is compared to the sun's drawing water from the earth. When there is again a need for water on the surface of the globe, the same sunshine converts the water into clouds and distribute it all over the globe. Similarly, the taxes collected by the government must be distributed to the people again as educational work, public work, sanitation work, and so on. This is very essential for a good government. The government should not simply exact taxes for useless squandering. The tax collection should be utilized for the public welfare of the state. I'll repeat that last line again. This is very essential for a good government. The government should not simply exact taxes for useless squandering. The tax collection should be utilized for the public welfare of the state. Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. It's great to be with all of you. Jumping into Srimad Bhagavatam's chapter. If you can be on video, by the way, we'd love to have you, love to see you. I'm just looking around the room. Great to see so many familiar faces. Henry Prabhu, Andrea, so good to see you, all of you, as well at the Bhakti Center as well. So good to see you in the temple room. A couple things that I will just mention. I have a couple notes from this verse, and I want to share something a little bit more personal today as well. You know, often we come into the classes and we're speaking more philosophically and having more practical insights. And I also want to share a little bit about Sri Vrindavan Dham. I love this description that's been given. So we are going through the 10th canto. We had killing of Agasura, Putana, Agasura, the different demons. We just had the Kaliya demon was killed, and then we had the forest fire. Pralambasura was killed, I think, by Lord Balaram. We had the second forest fire. Now we're at the description of Vrindavan Dham during the rainy season, which is July, August timeframe, into the autumn time, a very beautiful time in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So I'll speak a little bit on that. And I also want to speak a little bit on servant leadership, because Srila Prabhupada talks in this verse, in this purport, sorry, not Srila Prabhupada, disciples of Srila Prabhupada in the purport, they talk about, this verse talks about the idea of collecting taxes for the gain, for the benefit of those in the government, those in the kingdom, or those in the constituents of the government, and how we have to be mindful of what we're collecting and not uselessly squandering it, as it's mentioned in the purport. And this example of the sun is given, sun taking water for many, many months, collecting it, and then eventually in the rainy season it's released, right? For everyone, for the benefit of the earth, for the benefit of the animals, for the benefit of the human beings, for everyone. It's released as a benefit. And so I was thinking of four principles of servant leadership, because if you think about it, what this purport and this verse is describing, the earth follows these natural laws of servant leadership, of natural leadership, where it's not leadership for its own gain, but it's leadership for giving back. How do you serve, right? The earth is always serving all of us. We're alive, we're breathing because of the earth. And as leaders, we can embody these principles in our own life so we can give life to those around us. We can give life to the community, the environment, the organization around us, and our own devotional life and circles. I also wanted to speak a little bit on, when I was thinking of Vrindavan Dham, I was talking to Anand Bihar before this, and I was thinking of one of my mentors as well, and I wanted to speak a little bit about these principles of servant leadership through one of my mentors as well. But the first principle of servant leadership that I was thinking in this verse is really stewardship versus proprietorship. Stewardship versus proprietorship. Often we can, when we're not in this mentality, when we're in a false ego-based mentality of ruling and controlling what's around us, often we end up wanting to be the proprietor versus the steward. And if we look at this in the purport, it's mentioned that that whatever is collected should be taken for a very mindful reason, for the public welfare of everyone. And we see today, I was laughing a little bit when the word sales income tax and was used, right, and all of that, because I was thinking that if you look around in our governments, often things are taken, whether it's taxes or whatnot, but there's no, it's hard to really account for what's being done with it, right? It's often just taken off the top of our, whatever it's paycheck or other things. But because there's a lack of servant leadership, a lack of mindful leadership, there's so many situations where we see the government is actually hurting the people that it's leading and it's supposed to be leading. And obviously these things are necessary, tax is necessary, but if it's not done in this mindful state of mind, of being a servant leader, then it can be useless squandering, where these taxes are taken and we have not much to show for it sometimes, right, in our society, in our benefit to all of us, to the communities, to the people at large, and whatnot. But I was thinking that the first principle of the servant leadership is stewardship versus proprietorship. And this is a basic principle of in karma yoga, to speak of bhakti yoga. If we're the parent, if we are a teacher, if we're a mentor, if we're a friend, if we're a temple president, if we're a pujari, whatever the case might be, often it's easy to think that because we're in charge, or we have the power, so to speak, in that moment of whatever we're doing, it's easy to think that we're the proprietor, we're the controller. And it's easy to get lost in that mindset, but we're the steward. I was thinking that we're actually like the rental car owner of everything we're part of in our life, even our body, if you think about it. We're the rental car owner, right? It's the difference between if you have your own car and you're renting a car, generally speaking, right? If you have kids, it might be a different story. But if you have your own car, you can kind of do whatever you want with the car, right? You can, even if something happens, a couple bumps and bruises on the car, okay, it is what it is. When you're renting a car, you're very diligent because it's not just yours. It's not yours, actually, ultimately. So you're caretaking, you're stewarding the car. And you have to be very mindful because even one bump or bruise could be again, tax or a penalty for you from the company, actually, right? But in this case, we're mindful because we know what Krishna has given us and we want to do the best job we can with it. I was thinking of this quote that I've heard many times as it relates to the environment, which is, a hot topic and a very important topic today. But it's that we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors; we borrow it from our children. Actually, we don't inherit the earth from our ancestors; we borrow it from our children. And this is a true servant leader mindset, because if we're thinking in this way, of that we're actually borrowing from our children, we're thinking about every decision we're making from this rental car owner perspective of how does this affect those that come after me? I don't own this. I'm here in a moment in time. It's my job on my watch to the best I can to serve Srila Prabhupada, to serve the Acharyas, to serve Sri Srila Muralidhar, and leave whatever I'm doing, whatever service I'm doing, whether I'm cleaning or I'm the temple president, or I'm the pujari, whatever it is, or anything in between, or giving Bhagavatam class, whatever the case might be, leaving that service better than I found it, trying to add some value, some positive value to what I'm offering in the mood of service. And if we can think about this honestly, if we're honest, this type of mentality, if we were to adopt this and being very, very mindful, and I think everyone here is very mindful, but we're just reminding of ourselves of it and seeing where we fall short, actually, because we all do, one way, shape, or form. This would save us a lot of endless strife. And if you look at even our planet, a lot of the decisions that are not made in this servant leadership mindset of stewardship. We're stewards of our environment, stewards of our family, stewards of our community. I was thinking of some of the qualities that go toward each of these mindsets. And when we think about stewardship, we think of thoughtfulness. We're thoughtful. We're sensitive. We have foresight. Okay, if I make this decision today, in 2023, what's the effect in 2 years, in 5 years, in 10 years, in 50 years, in 100 years of this decision? So we're thoughtful. That takes a long-term approach. Sometimes the short term is not so wonderful, but we notice that when we're in this proprietorship mindset, we're thinking short term. But when we're in a stewardship mindset, we're thinking long term often, right? That's the key. So there's a mindfulness, there's a conservative approach. Not that we can't take risks, but we're mindful of the consequences of our risks as well for those around us. Also, again, there's an awareness, there's a deep awareness with this mindset. And then there's proprietorship, which is based off these qualities of thinking of envy, arrogance, right? I own this. I'm here, not thinking about what comes up after this time, just I'm here for this period of time and I'm going to make the most use of it, right? I'm going to use it to increase my name, fame, wealth, whatever the case might be, relationships, all of that. So it comes from a sense of arrogance, of false pride, short-term zero-sum thinking. We're thinking that our benefit or other people's benefit will be our loss, right? Black and white thinking. So again, this is very destructive. It breaks down community, it breaks down relationship. And while even short-term, things might look very glamorous or look like they're very going very well short-term, because some decisions are being made in that way, long-term, the effects are very detrimental. And we see that in our modern world, in this capitalist society, when we're not conscious, where it can very much get into this type of thinking. It can be very destructive for our relationships, our health, and also our planet as well. So that was the first principle of servant leadership, stewardship versus proprietorship. If you have any thoughts on that, please go ahead and comment in the chat or whatnot. We can also love to open it up at the end as well. I want to hear from everyone. The second principle is humility. Humility. As servant leaders, we need to know what we're doing is proper or if it's not, and also be open and receptive to always learning and getting guidance. Always learning and getting guidance. And it takes a lot of humility. Often when we're leading, whether we're giving this, whatever service we're given, we're empowered to do, it's very easy sometimes to become impervious or defensive toward feedback, right? When people are giving us feedback, giving us ways to improve, when we're learning, we think we want, our ego wants to feel like we know it all. We've got it all, we figured it out. We have nothing to really learn anymore because we've been doing it for 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years. So why should I learn from someone junior? Why should I learn from someone else? Right? So humility is so important as well. Being able to ask for feedback, knowing that it's okay to be corrected. It's okay to learn. We're all learning every day. So, and that's the second principle. The third is compassion. It's compassion. These qualities of envy, of arrogance, of pride, false pride, they come in when there's a lack of compassion, actually, in our society, within ourselves, and toward each other, actually. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur says in one of his bhajans, Jive Doya Krishna Nam Sarva Dharmasar, right? So chanting the holy names and being compassionate toward each other, the living entities, is the essence of Dharma. The essence of Dharma. So both. So sometimes we lose this compassion and we become more takers than givers. And I'll talk about this in a little bit. We become more takers than givers. Actually, let's talk about it right now. There's a study that was done in University of Pennsylvania, I believe. It was Adam Grant. He's a professor at Wharton, the Wharton University School of Business in University of Pennsylvania. And he did a study around, who are the most successful people, even in the corporate, secular world. We can see some of these principles they're already there in the devotional world, but some of this stuff just confirms what we're already seeing, what we already know to be true. And we can see how we can apply it into our own life. And he found that there's, I'm going to pull up this image here. So he did some studies and he's written a book on it called Givers and Takers, or Giving and Taking, I believe, something like that, to that effect. And he found that you can break people down, if you can see my screen, into 4 different categories, where there's givers and there's takers, and there's agreeable and disagreeable. You have givers, and givers are people who are more oriented toward, in any relationship and interaction, toward giving to others without expectation of return. Because they have a sense of compassion, reciprocity, right, of empathy. And you have takers who, in every interaction they're always looking to receive. What can they get out of that interaction? Can they benefit from them, right? And then he also has agreeable and disagreeable. And agreeable people are those not necessarily who are nice, but who are conflict averse. These are people who like to kind of tell you what you want to hear, right? And we all can get into this mindset, right, sometimes. So they can be eager to kind of please, to agree. And then you have people who are disagreeable, who are often maybe unpopular sometimes even, but they have a lot of valuable feedback. They're disagreeable in the sense that they love to give valuable feedback. They love conflict. They feel like conflict, not in a bad way. They feel like there needs to be a healthy level of engagement and even sometimes disagreement to move things forward. They're not afraid to tell you the truth, to be honest with you, right? To help improve the organization, the relationship, spiritual life, whatever the case might be. Okay, so these are the 4 kind of categories you have. And he was mentioning that that when you look at these 4, you have the takers, and the kind of the worst of these, or if you could say the most detrimental to an organization or relationship. His question was, who are the most beneficial? Who do the best for an organization, and also personally, who's doing the best for themselves in terms of their success and their health and happiness and whatnot. And what he found was very interesting. He found that we have the disagreeable takers who can be rude, who can be condescending, who can be very maybe manipulative sometimes, right? And they're looking to take from others. They're kind of the most dangerous, you could say. Right? They're looking to take, but they're also have a bad attitude about it, you could say, right? Then you have the agreeable takers. And this is not so great, but he said that this is there, and we're all takers at some point. We all have to take from our environment. We also, it's okay to take, right? But they're agreeable, so they come in with a good attitude overall. Come in with a good attitude. Then you have the agreeable givers, right? And in the givers category, it's interesting because people often feel that the best area will be the agreeable givers, right? Those agreeable givers who are conflict averse, who are friendly, who are very optimistic, have a good attitude. And in many cases, that's the case, right? But they're looking to give to others, looking to make a connection, maybe give someone an opportunity, serve someone without feeling like they need to be paid back immediately, all of that. But actually what he found was at the top of many organizations, people who are doing really well, who are rated very well, and we can apply this into our own spiritual life, and we see this, are some of the agreeable givers and also the disagreeable givers. And these are people who are, again, the disagreeable givers. He found that those were the very special people who were giving to an organization with this sense of being open to feedback, of being open to giving without receiving, but also open to giving others feedback and being honest with others, right? And really being honest and looking to improve oneself. And it could be viewed sometimes as disagreeable or hard to work with or unpopular. And this doesn't mean that we can have a bad attitude, by the way. It just means that we want to make sure that we are not just conflict averse, that we're giving back in a way where we're jumping in and being honest with others, and also seeing conflict as an opportunity to grow, as an opportunity to lead, as an opportunity to get better as an organization or in a relationship. So I wanted to share this because these four models as givers and takers, sometimes we view others, and we talk about these principles of servant leadership and compassion. It's actually about giving more than taking. But in giving, we also have two categories of givers. We have these agreeable ones and disagreeable ones as well. And so how can we become more givers than takers? That's the main point. And also, how can we appreciate those who are sometimes even disagreeable, right? Without taking that too personally, and appreciating for those for who they are as well, especially if the intention is positive. So we have this principle of compassion, giving more than taking. And if we're not mindful, going back to servant leadership, we talked about the government and the taxes and the sun and the rain, it's examples, analogy that's given by Shukadeva Goswami, these metaphors. We can end up taking more than we're giving, right? Government's collecting those taxes, but squandering for public welfare, squandering what it needs to be doing, then it's taking more than it's actually giving back. There should be an equal reciprocation, or if not, giving more than taking. As a leader, you want to be giving more in an environment than you're taking from it, as much as possible. So that's the third principle. And then I want to share one last principle, which is courage and determination. It's also very important. So we have this principle first of stewardship and proprietorship. We've got humility, compassion, giving more than taking. We talked about agreeable givers, disagreeable givers. Same thing with takers. What's dangerous, what's not. If you have any questions on that, we can talk a little bit more about that as well. And then this fourth principle, which is courage and determination, is also really important, because going back to disagreeable givers, we also need to have the courage to do what's right and to live in our values, even if it's unpopular. Sometimes we might see something in our society, in our organizations, that is not right? Or that needs to be looked at, that needs to be questioned, that needs to be pushed in a certain direction. And so we have to make sometimes unpopular decisions. And a servant leader has the necessary courage to also be viewed sometimes unpopularly, if need be. Not in the way of disrespecting others or in that we're being condescending toward others, but in the way of being very grounded in one's values and principles and goals to serve, that they do what they have to do. You see this with Srila Prabhupada and so many different acharyas and examples, where sometimes different things, even among his own godbrothers, Srila Prabhupada, his decisions were questioned sometimes. He was very open. He revolutionized many things, actually, compared to the very traditional mindsets from where he comes from, and especially in traditional India. And sometimes his godbrothers would criticize him also, right? And sometimes the secular world would criticize as well. And Srila Prabhupada did not take offense to this very gravely, because he understood that he was a game changer and he was changing things, but he knew the principles, he knew his values, he knew what was important, and made decisions according to that. He didn't focus on being popular and popular opinion, but had the courage and determination to make decisions and to make points that were necessary to make for the benefit of everyone around. And we can see when we look back at those decisions, going back to the point of like long-term and short-term decision making, we can see the long-term, those decisions panned out in many ways, right? And some of those revolutionary ideas that he had. Of course, there's still a lot of work to be done, but we can see that there's a lot of thought and value put into those decisions. So those are the 4 principles. And I wanted to just briefly switch gears, or not really switch gears, but kind of amplify this with speaking towards someone. As I was reading this verse, I was thinking about, what do I say? So I was thinking about these principles of servant leadership. And this verse, this whole chapter is giving a description of Vrindavan Dham. And actually, I had the fortune of staying in Sri Vrindavan Dham several times during the rainy season and autumn, but particularly the rainy season in July, August, which is interesting because it's very hot in Vrindavan as well. And then it's very wet in Vrindavan because it's raining quite a bit, right? And so I was just thinking of those times, and I actually had opportunity to stay there when I was younger, in my teenage years, actually growing up. And I was recently just reading this book on a personality that really inspired me. It's called Kirtan Revolution by Kalachandji Das on Shri Aindra Prabhu. And he was a mentor of mine and really an inspirational figure for me growing up in Krishna consciousness and grew up in the movement. And I just finished this book some time ago. And when I was reading this verse and the descriptions of Vrindavan Dham in the rainy season, I couldn't help but be taken back to memories from that time, from spending time in Kirtan with His Grace Aindra Prabhu, and really benefiting from the association of a servant leader, actually. And so this is, usually don't do this, but little anecdotal. This is a little picture from that time of little Anuj here, teenage Anuj here playing Mridanga, His Grace Aindra Prabhu here. This is from, I believe, 2009, a year before he passed away. That's there. I think it's August 2009. And I was thinking that of just glorifying Prabhu very briefly through these 4 qualities of servant leadership, these 4 qualities. That's me there playing Mridanga, shaved up with the kurta, the blue kurta. So I was just thinking about His Grace Aindra Prabhu. We talked about servant leadership, stewardship versus proprietorship, right? How do we, I was thinking of different examples that I felt from him, where so many different stories and examples, but I was just thinking that, even when you go now, you can see there's by the pillar that he would always sit, there's a little plaque that honors him. And his mindset was always that I'm going to sit in Vrindavan Dham and try to inspire everyone else, right? And he knew that he was a steward of the Kirtan team and party. He wasn't the proprietor of it, the ruler of it, the controller of it. How do I serve Shri Radha Shyam Sundar, Krishna Balaram, Gaur Nitai? And how do I serve everyone else that comes here to getting to their ultimate goal of Raj Bhakti? And so that was always his mindset. And so we can see that there was a sense of stewardship of what he created, even the 24-hour Kirtan Mandali, always trying to help build that, to guard that. There's so many stories of actually even him. I remember going and he painted and he would clean he painted actually the entire ashram himself, the Brahmachari ashram, and he actually would clean the ashram himself. on many, many, many occasions. And he was there for over 25 years, where he would clean the toilets himself, even after 25 years of spending time in the ashram and being the most senior devotee in many cases in that environment, and really a legend in his service. But he would clean the toilets himself, and he would actually take it upon himself to do some of the most menial service in changing things, upgrading the beds and upgrading this and the fans or whatever the case might be. It's a very austere environment in Vrindavan, especially when he first moved there in the 80s. But then even in going through, it can get very, very hot in the summertime. There's very little AC and the electricity goes off many times. Many of you are familiar with this. But he would take it upon himself to do very menial tasks and services for the pleasure of Radha Shamsundar and to be a servant leader, because he was a steward, not a proprietor. And the second quality was his humility. You can see his humility. I remember when the first time I met him, I was maybe 15 or 16 years old at that time. And it's a longer story, but I'll give a short version here. I was so excited to meet him, and it felt like surreal seeing him, coming down right before Gaur Aarti for the 6:30 slot, where he would come and sing right before Gaur Aarti. For those of you who've been there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But he would come down, and I remember sitting, and he had come, and after the kirtan, one of his team members introduced my brother and I to him. And I was just, giddy with excitement to meet him, because I'd seen so many videos and listened to so many of his cassettes growing up as a child in the 90s. And actually the first thing he said to me really demonstrated his humility as well, where I remember when I first mentioned to him and, he asked me where I'm from. And actually the first real question he asked me was my tune too hard to follow? Was it okay? How was my kirtan? Please give me some feedback on my kirtan. And I'm sitting here like a 16-year-old kid, and I'm thinking, Prabhu, why are you asking me? It was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. I have no real feedback. I'm just happy to be here, honestly. And for him to ask me that was so disarming, actually, to me as a child and as a teenager at that time, because I wasn't expecting that at all. Maybe I was expecting some just encouragement, maybe some instructions. But actually, he was asking me feedback on his kirtan. Was it okay? Was the tune okay? Was it too difficult? What can I change? And I found that he was very open to that, which I was melted by his humility in the moment. Then compassion. We look at compassion, giving more than taking. We talked about the takers. We talked about the givers. And we can see Aindra Prabhu actually, even in this, if you read this book, it's an incredible book. It charts his journey from Virginia, DC, that area where he's from, from the mountains of the Battle of Bull Run, right? Kind of grew up in that area, all the way to New York, which is one of my favorite places in the world, and one of Aindra Prabhu's favorite places to actually preach in the world. And then going to Vrindavan Dham, and a lot in between that, but going to Sri Vrindavan Dham as well. And you can see wherever he is, you can see there's such an intense desire to serve and to give more than he's even taking from that environment, really just to give fully. And we can see that so many impediments, even when he started the 24-hour kirtan in Sri Vrindavan Dham, I think in 1984, I believe, or whatever the case might be. Maybe I'm not correct on that date, but if anyone knows, please let me know. But it might be 84, I believe, or 85. But when he started it, there's so many impediments. There was no one there really to start the kirtan with. Often it would just be him chanting for like 7 to 8 hours by himself, actually. And you can see there's so many impediments, but a true Vaishnava or Vaishnavi, wherever they go, they're always looking to be an asset. They're always looking to serve. They're always looking to, again, make things more positive, to leave places better than they found it. And he certainly did that when it comes to ISKCON, when it comes to our movement, when it comes to even the Kirtan Mandali and 24-hour Kirtan in Sri Vrindavan Dham, really inspired just from that small seed of sitting in Vrindavan Dham. He was able to give so much to Srila Prabhupada and serve and give to the whole world, actually. We can see that inspiring so many people, especially youth. He inspired everyone so many ways, but especially many, many youth who were on the fringes of just trying to figure out what they were doing spiritually, how they're plugging in. And growing up again in this tradition, I can attest to the difficulty of that, and the challenges that many go through. And so he inspired so many in that way, and actually really surcharged their spiritual life, and not only just kept them around, but surcharged them to a level where they wouldn't have gotten without his guidance and his example in many ways. And looking at the example here also of giving and taking, and I'll wrap up in just 2-3 minutes. He was sometimes also intense. He was an intense personality sometimes. And I say that with all respect and, having personal interaction with him. And we look at the givers and takers. Sometimes he was a disagreeable giver, actually. And he had some strong feedback. Sometimes it was said in a very strong way. Sometimes, I remember a couple examples of him giving me some corrective feedback, but I cherish it so much because I know it was coming from a place to actually help me grow, actually. Always trying to help others grow. And so when we look at this, we talked about the agreeable givers and the disagreeable givers. Sometimes, the disagreeable givers are unpopular because they can say things in sometimes a way that it's a little strong, maybe can, turn some people off. Well, we have to really look at their intention. Their intention is pure. Their intention is to help, to serve. Yes, of course, it can be said sometimes differently, but we can see you can take it for what it's worth. And we can see you can apply it to our spiritual life and see how we can grow from what we're being given. And so sometimes he would be giving sometimes some intense feedback, even toward our movement, things he felt like needed to be changed or rethought of or refocused on, reprioritized. But honestly, if I look at it, he was absolutely correct in many ways, actually. And so we do need to focus on some of those things. And so we can take that for what it's worth. And also, I wanted to say that givers are also they're very mindful of the power of investing, right? When we're giving, we're always looking to make the environments better. So even planting a seed, when Sri Aindra Prabhu planted the seed many years ago in Vrindavan Dham of starting 24-hour kirtan, he didn't know what the seed was going to, what is going to fructify into. But if you think about it, when you're in that state, when we're all starting different things, we don't know what it's going to end up being, right? We don't know where it's going to end up going. All we can do is invest and serve and water that seed every day. But we can see that over time, that investment can yield results beyond anyone's wildest imagination. As we can see, his service inspired so many around the globe, countless devotees from all walks of life, many youth, countless youth as well, to serve the holy names, to kirtan, to take seriously this path of bhakti as well. As you can see that. So planting seeds, givers also plant seeds wherever they go. And they try to plant these seeds so that they can fructify into fruit-giving trees, right? These trees that are able to give so much shelter and fruit and nourishment to everyone around them. I had so many different stories of this as well, of him giving so much time. I remember during the rainy season, again, being in Vrindavan Dham, and often people, many devotees go to Vrindavan Dham, of course, to pass away, to leave their body. And I remember, one even sitting in his room for hours talking to him. And I mean, who am I? I was like a 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid at that time. And he was speaking, for like 2 hours to me and to us about different things, giving so much time, so much energy, so much passion to help us grow a little bit more spiritually. And I remember many cases of us going to do kirtan for devotees who were passing away. And he would give so much time and energy, and we would go. And often all of us, who were, in the prime of our youth would, 2-3 hours into the kirtan, we'd be ready to, pack it up and go home for the night and feeling a little tired. We've done already a bunch of kirtan at the temple. So we're going now to sing for different devotees who are leaving. And he would be still just as enthusiastic. And sometimes he would not even stop until, if a devotee was leaving their body, sometimes if they knew it was very imminent, just hours before they would pass away, he would chant until the devotee left their body. So if it was sometimes even 3, 4, 5 hours, he would keep going. Giving so much time and energy, in addition to all the puja he had with the Shaligram Shila and his deities, He had so many of them, and also so many other different services he was doing. He would give so much time and energy to others. So a really a consummate giver in that way. And then lastly, courage and determination. I talked about this, the fourth pillar of servant leadership. As mentioned, he was sometimes a disagreeable giver, had strong opinions about different things, but he was determined and courageous to stick by his values, what he had learned from Srila Prabhupada, and speaking his truth about what he felt like needed to be changed. Again, it was sometimes intense for sure, but that courage and determination was very much there. So we can see that, we can see his example. And I wanted to just kind of glorify Prabhu today, because I usually don't speak on more personal or anecdotal topics, but given kind of this description of Vrindavan Dham in the rainy season, I was just taken back to all these memories of spending time as a kid, really, the young boy, young man, and having the association. And given that his book just came out as well recently, was just wanting to glorify him as a servant leader who was trying to do his best to serve Srila Prabhupada as well too. So wanted to end with that. Thank you all very much for your attentive listening, and I'll open up for any questions, any comments, any concerns, any thoughts, all of that. Vivo.
Jamuna Jai, go ahead.
I'm bursting at the seams. I think that Anuj, I always like the minute I see your name up here in the schedule, I'm like, yay. This was, Adi oftentimes says people, it was a perfect class. This was just, it was perfect. It was Sastrik, it was personal, it was inspiring. Thank you so much. And there's so many things, so I'm going to stop myself because otherwise I could yammer on for forever. But one of the things I was thinking about, just the word steward leadership, and we see it, the Bhagavatam has so many stories. The minute you said that, I just grabbed my notebook and I started writing down all the kings. And isn't it interesting that so many of the stories in the Bhagavatam are about kings, that people like, King Shivi, King Rantidev, King Amarish, Lord Ram, so many of them are exemplars about how to be the steward leadership. What to speak of, like you were saying, Aindra Prabhu, and just before this, I was listening to Kastuba glorified Tamal Krishna Goswami, and when you were talking about disagreeable givers, I could only think of the power of that man that I wish I had met. And so we are so lucky to have so many exemplars of exactly what you were talking about. So thank you for reminding of us that. And then one more thing, and I'll shut up, is when I was in Vrindavan this last time, just a few weeks ago, it actually rained, which it has never rained when I was there before. And it slammed down. And as you were talking, it was bringing me back. And what we did that day was we went to, Damodar Maharaj took us to the samadhis there of many great people. So as you were speaking, it sort of brought me back to I haven't been there for the whole rainy season, but for that one day, like walking in the mud of Vrindavan and glorifying great sannyasi. So thank you so much, and I'll be quiet.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Love it. I don't have much. I'm always speechless when you're speaking, Jamuna Jai.
Because I clamor.
No. Really beautiful. And just the point that you're mentioning around the examples that we have. There's so many examples, like you said, in Shastra, different kings and servants and so many different examples. So it's all there actually, and we can see. What I find so interesting is that we can see these examples in the secular world. We can see the research, but it's just confirming what we already see actually in our Shastra. So it's just a confirmation. Thank you. We had some other thoughts as well. Bhima Prabhu had his hand raised, and anyone else? Yes, Bhima Prabhu, do you want to come off mute and jump in? Anyone in the temple room? Any other questions or comments?
Let somebody in the temple room go first. Adi Parush, there's the head. Let Adi Parush go.
Hare Krishna. A wonderful class about the principles of a Krishna conscious leader. Krishna himself comes and sets those examples. Srila Prabhupada, of course, wonderful hearing you glorify Aindra Prabhu. And that we are steward on Krishna's behalf, that we're not the owners. It's not for our pleasure. We're not the controller. And how wonderful is Krishna that he gives us these examples we can actually apply these principles in devotional service to Krishna. Of course, the mundane government does collect taxes and gives it back to pay the garbage men and the policemen and this and that. But the Brahminical component of society is also meant to be like a tax collector. And we don't just legislate, they have to give this much. We go in a bigger capacity. We inspire, request, and instruct them, yeah, please give. And then we must give it back. We collect a lot for Krishna's service. We try to give people a chance to have access to devotional service to Krishna. And then we give it back in the form of temples, in the form of literature, in the form of the performing arts and the graphic arts, teaching the principles of religion, prashadam distribution. Okay, the temple altar is opening up. Radha Muralidhar are about to smile. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna, Guru Prabhu.
Thank you. Here you go.
You want to hold this over there? You're more steady.
Do you need the stem?
What?
Can I use it the stem?
Asitam Purasundaram Amniya Mahaham Tami Govinda Haripurita Mahaham Tami Govinda Haripurita Mahaham Tami Sakale Vyavritimanti Pasyanti Paryanti Viranti Anjati Maya Sadhu Kava Vibrahya Govindam. Take a moment here. Amaham Sham.
Bhima Prabhu, Hare Krishna. We're ready for your comment.
Oh, Haribol Prabhu. Nice
Haribol.
to see you.
Nice to see you
That
too.
was a wonderful, yeah, That was I have to turn the camera around here and engage in my services here. But that was wonderful how you glorified Aindra. I find Aindra to be such an internal inspiration. It seems like whether it was in his kirtan or his life or his instructions that you said, that he was a person who was very adamant about what he said, forceful and clear. And that's what a sadhu is. They cut. And when we get things cut from us, it doesn't always feel good. And I remember reading some portions of his book, The Art of Transcendental Book Distribution. Prabhu, are you familiar with that?
I'm familiar with it, yes.
Okay, so there were some things he said in there that were controversial. So I'll take from the most controversial part of that, which was he said, damn this idea of varnashram, damn this idea of, devotee marriage, damn this idea of hope for the future. Be damned. And he didn't mean that in a cursing way. He meant that these are the things that may be things that we fall back into, whether you think you're a Brahmin or Kshatriya or Sudra or whatever, we fall back into these things. But as Lord Chaitanya said, these things are all artificial. And as someone who lives around lots of animals, and I see them being born and I see them dying a lot quicker than us humans do. They come into this world and they leave. Aindra Prabhu, through his chanting, through his kirtan, which was the most intense kirtan I've ever heard in my life from any corner of the earth, he was saying, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. And when you see all this death around you, I've had a few friends die, a couple from myocarditis. Strange how that came upon them. Because they were young, 40 and 50 years old. So when you see that stuff happening, you just go, what am I doing thinking about the future? What am I doing making plans? The thing is, Jeev Jago, chant Hare Krishna and really mean it, because at any moment, just like these, I had a 1,700-pound stallion here who was the life of this farm. In fact, the reason why we bought this farm, a big giant white Percheron, beautiful animal. When he moved, it was like the cross between a tank and a Ferrari. It was incredible. And I did videos of him, and we had people visit and, just be in awe of him. And, within a couple of weeks from his height of his passion, he came down with a very rare disease, and we had to make a decision within one day to have to, bring him to, a state where he was no longer a horse anymore and move him on to the next life. And so we have to be aware of that at all time. And you talked about stewardship and leadership, and you mentioned Aindra Prabhu, and we are reminded that the best form of leadership, those three words, Jeev Jago, Jeev, that's those three statements, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago, Jeev Jago. We're sleeping in Maya. We're literally asleep. And sometimes it is enough to hear, as Prabhupada said, the ears stay awake. It is enough to hear somebody say Jeev Jago or Hare Krishna, and sometimes you need a slap in the face. And Aindra Prabhu was not averse to giving you either of them. So thank you once again for reminding me of that. So Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
No, I love that. And just reflecting on what you're sharing, Bhima Prabhu, just that he was intense and heavy at many times, honestly. But it was like you said, in that vein. And I feel like we can't imitate that. Like my thoughts on it. Like sometimes people try to imitate Prabhu. It's not possible. And we shouldn't try even. I think that we should be more, not as, cutting or intense or heavy at times. We have to be mindful because we have to have the requisite example to back it up. Prabhu was chanting 115 rounds a day, doing so much puja, like so steeped in his sadhana and his service to Guru, and he was exemplifying it, And sometimes we have this, we get inspired, and which is good for us to be inspired. I think sometimes people think that they can be Prabhu, and it's not possible. Actually, we shouldn't try. But like you said, it's very much inspiring to us to take his example and to follow his example in so many ways of how he served. And to your point around some of the points he made that were controversial, to me, honestly, I don't find them too controversial, although I can see where sometimes people do, because like you said, it's not so much that he was saying to hell with those things, but he was saying it in a way to wake us up, exactly like you said, Prabhu. And he was saying it like, let's stop being superficial about life. Let's stop being superficial. Let's be really meaningful about what matters. Whether you're, whatever stage of life you're in, whether you're married, you're a brahmachari, you're a sannyasi, whatever case, whatever ashram, varna and ashram you're in, let's be mindful. Let's not hide behind our status, our role, these like designations to kind of coast spiritually in our spiritual life, And so definitely he showed that in his example, and he showed that even in his passing away, where he's clutching the feet of his, Nitai Sachisutta, and you could see his full surrender to them as well too. So I loved your points. To me, it's not even controversial in the sense that I think people take them so seriously when he's actually just trying to help others grow. And
whenever we see death, I mean, we're not paying attention, especially in Western society. I remember Radhanath Maharaj said when he first went over to India before he met Prabhupada, he used to sit at the ghats. I'm not sure what they're called, the ones where they burn the bodies.
Yeah.
And he would meditate. And they do that in the Shiva religion and stuff like that. We don't do that in the West. We hide everybody away and we don't see it. And if you're around it, as I said with my animals, you just start realizing that this is just like a dream. And at any moment, the flame of the material life that we have is going to go out. So we really need to open our eyes, and we really need to make a priority of calling out to Krishna first thing in the morning. And that's all. It's a very simple thing. It's amazing. Prabhupada said it is the hardest thing to become a pure devotee, but it's also it's the easiest thing. There's an easy path. But once again, your class here has very much inspired. When you brought up Aindra, Prabhu, I was just like all ears. So thank you very much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Hear that. Thank you. I just want to shout out some of the chat as well. Just Andrea, thank you for your thoughts around stewardship and proprietorship. I know she just had to leave. And then Jamunajai, I know you're mentioning, but just want to appreciate everyone in the chat as well. Henry, who was mentioning, Kamal Krishna Goswami, as mentioned earlier. So glad that resonated. And just want to thank everyone for always just being so encouraging and participating in class. Thank you.
Thank you, Anuj Prabhu. Great class. And bringing Aindra Prabhu and his pastimes into this Sangha is a great idea. It was a great idea. Srila Prabhupada built this house where everyone can live, whether you're intense or whether you're gentle and shy. There's room for everyone, and we can take inspiration from any bona fide, genuine, surrendered devotee, whether they have intense demeanor or humble demeanor, like Bhima Prabhu. Is the most humble devotee on this call.
That would make you a storyteller.
Yeah. Okay. Have a wonderful day. We're all gonna die. So take this class serious. Like, this is not a class. This is a wake-up call. This is a slap in the face from Anuj Prabhu.
It's a gentle request for all of us.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.